30 years ago, Star Trek. DS9 gave us another great James Bond story after GoldenEye. When we think of Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, DS9, our minds often wander to the grand political intrigues of the Dominion War, the moral complexity of Captain Sisko, or the intricate character arcs of Odo, Kira, and the rest of the station's eclectic crew. But hidden among the episodes of this ground-breaking 1990s 2000 series lies a gem that, if you squint just right, could almost be mistaken for a Starfleet take on a James Bond film. A slick, suspenseful, action-packed espionage adventure that feels both entirely Star Trek and yet thrillingly familiar to fans of 007. 30 years ago, in 1995, while the world was still buzzing from GoldenEye, the first James Bond film after Pierce Brosnan's debut, DS9 aired an episode that captured the essence of espionage in the Star Trek universe. That episode was In the Pale Moonlight, which aired during Season 6 in 1998, though the spirit of what DS9 accomplished with Bond-like intrigue had been brewing since the mid-90s. While GoldenEye redefined Bond for a new generation, mixing high-stakes, smooth villains, and morally gray heroism, DS9 translated that energy into the framework of a space station under siege, showing us that Star Trek could handle not only science fiction but also suspense, betrayal, and espionage with the same dexterity. The espionage of Deep Space Nine. Unlike The Next Generation, which often dealt with philosophical dilemmas and moral allegories, DS9 had a darker edge. The show embraced serialized storytelling and moral ambiguity, setting the stage for stories where the line between hero and villain blurred. This made the station the perfect backdrop for a Star Trek version of a Bond story. Just as James Bond operates in the shadows, doing morally questionable things for the greater good, the characters of DS9 often found themselves making hard choices, particularly in their dealings with the Dominion. Take, In the Pale Moonlight, Captain Sisko faces a moral quagmire. How far should he go to bring the Romulans into the war against the Dominion? To do so, he enlists the help of the morally flexible Garrick, a former Cardassian spy whose suave demeanor and shadowy connections make him a perfect Star Trek analog to Bond villains, or allies. The episode revolves around deception, high-stakes risk, and a creeping sense of tension that builds to a morally devastating climax. Every scene feels like a game of espionage. Secret meetings, hidden motives, and the looming question of whether the ends justify the means. The parallels to a Bond narrative are uncanny. Where Bond may use gadgets, clever disguises, and charm, Sisko and Garrick use deception, careful planning, and moral flexibility. The stakes, of course, are interstellar rather than global, but the adrenaline is just as palpable. Sisko as the reluctant Bond. What makes DS9's espionage so compelling is how it reframes the archetype. James Bond is usually unflappable, confident, and, in many ways, morally infallible, or at least morally uncomplicated. Captain Sisko, on the other hand, is reluctant. He doesn't enjoy subterfuge, and he certainly isn't in it for the glamour. Yet, the episode demonstrates that heroism doesn't always have to be about nobility. Sometimes it's about pragmatism. Sisko embodies the weary, morally conflicted spy, one who knows the risks but cannot shy away from doing what he believes is necessary to save millions of lives. It's a more human, grounded take on the spy archetype, a Bond for those who prefer depth and introspection alongside their thrills. There's a reason this episode resonates even decades later. It doesn't shy away from consequences. In Bond films, the hero often escapes unscathed, leaving audiences exhilarated and satisfied. In DS9, the moral and psychological fallout is front and center. Sisko's final voiceover, an admission of guilt and the haunting knowledge of what he has done, cements the episode as more than just a Star Trek story. It's a meditation on the costs of espionage and war, showing that even when victory is achieved, there can be no true closure. This is the kind of narrative complexity that DS9 thrived on, and why it can be seen as a spiritual cousin to Bond's high-stakes world. Gadgets, glamour, and galactic tension. While DS9 lacked the flashy gadgets and exotic locales of GoldenEye, it more than made up for it with cleverness and narrative innovation. The espionage gadgets in DS9 were often political leverage, coded messages, and elaborate plots, tools of the mind rather than the hand. In the Pale Moonlight, The suspense is driven by the intricate dance between Sisko, Garak, and the ever-present threat of exposure. This cerebral approach to spycraft gives the episode a slow burn tension reminiscent of classic Bond thrillers like From Russia with Love, where the danger is less about explosions and more about betrayal and detection. Even the visual style of DS9 contributes to the espionage feel. The station's shadowy corners, dimly lit corridors, and the ever-present hum of space machinery create an environment ripe for secret dealings. Unlike the sunny glamour of Bond films, DS9's setting is claustrophobic, tense, and unpredictable. Every conversation could carry a double meaning, every alliance might be a trap. It's Bond-level intrigue, but grounded in Star Trek's distinctive aesthetic, a combination that elevates the story to something uniquely satisfying. Villains, allies, and moral gray zones. No Bond story is complete without compelling antagonists, and DS9 delivers in spades. Garak, the Cardassian tailor and ex-spy, is a masterpiece of morally ambiguous characterization. His charm, wit, and hidden motives make him as enigmatic as any Bond villain or ally. The audience is constantly guessing his intentions, never quite sure if he's helping Sisko out of loyalty, self-interest, or something darker. This tension mirrors the uncertainty Bond faces in his missions. Who can be trusted, and at what cost? The Romulans themselves also serve as a reminder of the complexity of diplomacy and espionage. They are not cartoonish villains. They have their own agendas, their own pride, and their own intricate politics. Just as Bond must navigate the treacherous waters of Cold War-era espionage, Sisko must navigate interstellar diplomacy, where every choice can have profound consequences. The result is a narrative that is not only thrilling but intellectually engaging, forcing viewers to consider strategy, consequence, and morality simultaneously. Legacy and influence. Looking back 30 years later, it's clear that DS9's forays into spy thriller territory were ahead of their time. While Bond continued to evolve, with GoldenEye revitalizing the franchise, DS9 was quietly demonstrating that serialized storytelling in science fiction could achieve the same levels of tension, intrigue, and moral complexity as a top-tier spy thriller. It showed that space operas didn't have to be just about exploration and ethics. They could be about espionage, political maneuvering, and the dark realities of war. This influence can be seen in subsequent Star Trek series, particularly Star Trek Picard, which embraces morally ambiguous plots, covert operations, and high-stakes tension, reminiscent of both DS9 and Bond. DS9 set a template. The hero can be flawed, the mission can be morally questionable, and the thrill can come as much from psychological tension as from physical action. It's espionage in space, executed with unparalleled skill. Why In the Pale Moonlight feels like a Bond story. At its core, what makes this DS9 episode feel like a James Bond adventure isn't the gadgets, explosions, or romantic entanglements. It's the narrative, tension, the moral ambiguity, and the stakes. Like Bond, Sisko operates in a world where trust is a luxury and deception is a necessity. He must rely on allies whose motives are uncertain and navigate an environment fraught with danger. And like Bond, there's a cost. Victory is never clean, and the personal toll is immense. 30 years later, this episode still resonates because it respects its audience's intelligence, just as Bond does at his best. It doesn't provide easy answers or neatly packaged conclusions. It challenges viewers to wrestle with the same ethical dilemmas faced by the characters. And in doing so, it proves that Star Trek can deliver